All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to number 4, the consent calendar. Are there any items that people want to pull off the consent calendar? Oh, Carol, do you have a comment?
No, I was just like
Ready.
getting ahead of you,
Oh, great. I love that.
which is rare. Are you ready? Oh, no.
Board Member Klein?
Sorry, just trying to find it in my notes here. I just want to pull number 2, the contracts.
The West Ed contract?
There's 4 different contracts
Oh,
listed under number
4.2.
2.
You want
Yeah,
to pull
4.2.
4.2,
Yes.
all of 4.2?
Yes.
Okay.
And I do have an item.
Oh, I didn't know, I thought you were going to make it the consent. Okay, I apologize for that.
No, I wasn't getting
Okay.
ahead of you in a good way.
Oh, I'm so
necessarily.
sorry. I'm so sorry, Miss Carol. Okay, thank you, Board Member Klein. Board Member Lear?
And I'd like to pull item 4.5.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Then I would be seeking a motion for the consent calendar. So moved? Have those?
Second.
Board Member Cannon, Board Member Davis. So the motion before the board is the board approves the consent calendar minus 4.2 and 4.5. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, since I went out of order, I'm actually going to go to 4.5 first because Carol, I thought you were doing something different. So Carol, I'll go to you.
I would like to make a motion that's a substitute motion to what's proposed. And I'd like to make the motion that the board, and I also have to make a sort of disclaimer, so I don't know which you want first, but let me make
So
the
maybe
motion.
the disclaimer and
Okay.
then the motion, would that be okay?
Sure. First of all, and kind of precedes the motion that I'm going to make, but I do legal work for the school that I'm going to speak about, Roots, mostly pro bono legal work, but over 5 years I've worked with the school. Actually, the motion regarding turnaround in the school has nothing to do with the work I do with the school, but I want to disclose that and let you know that should anybody have an objection.
Okay,
The
so
chair will
Carol,
speak to that.
in our bylaws, the conflict of interests are laid out pretty clearly. And one of the appropriate actions that we can take would be to, if there's no objection to having Carol move forward, if there's no objection from any board members, then she can go ahead and make her motion. Does anyone have an objection with her making her motion? Okay, go ahead, Carol.
Thank you. My motion would be to recommend that all schools in the list of schools that have been in turnaround be approved to exit turnaround.
Second, Board Member Hutchinson. Do you want to have a discussion to that, Carol? Would you like
I
to speak
can
to that?
speak to it briefly, because I don't want it to be a surprise or stealth move, but I have worked with this school. I've talked with administrators who work with turnaround and the superintendent for several years. The director of the school has been extremely supportive in working with turnaround. He's not a defiant charter school director who doesn't want to be bothered or doesn't want to do what the law requires. He also runs a very unique school, if something can be very unique. But it is a school that serves the very most difficult students that I've ever seen in a school. And I don't need to belabor this necessarily. I hope some of you have visited Roots. I've been out there 6 or 7 or 8 times. Every time I'm there, I meet students. Tyler makes a point of introducing students to me. Tyler Bastian is the director. Just to give you a sense of this distinction, he was saying that the class that entered just recently, just as school started, had 9 students that no other school in the Salt Lake Valley would enroll. Some of them because they were extremely credit deficient. Some of them, most of them, he said, because they have safe school problems that allows schools not to enroll students. But that means if Roots did not enroll these students and help them work, they would be enrolled nowhere. And that's the kind of nature of the students that he takes. He also noted that at least a couple of these students as teenagers can't read. And he's experienced enough in this program to know what this school needs. They've spent between $300,000 and $400,000 now in turnaround, $300,000 to $400,000 in turnaround over 4 years, and he believes they've made progress. This is no reflection on any of the individuals at USBE. He speaks very highly, as do other school personnel that I've met, of the USBE folks that he's worked with. It's just not a program that's working for Roots. He believes that there are other ways that the school can use what it's learned over the last 4 years and improve the school and still serve these very most difficult students. So I'm just ready to say this is a program, this is a square peg that we're trying to force into a round hole. And it should be able to request the help it needs from USBE and move forward without being in this particular program.
Thank you, Board Member Lear. I'm going to go to Board Member Hymas, and then I'm coming to you, and then to.
Thank you. I want to speak, I can't add to what Carol has said because she said everything that is on my mind, but I do want to echo in my support for this school, who has taken on a heavy load and has done a great job doing it, and has shown over the years improvement and they will continue to work towards improvement. And so I support the motion.
Thank you, Board Member Hymas. Vice Chair Davis?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you've said, and, but my concern is this. We have to have a plan for our alternative schools, and Roots is not the only school that's in the quandary. And when you say there are 9 students that nobody else was taken, we have a problem because our alternative schools aren't taking students because they can't get out of turnaround when they take some of these students. And so the very purpose that they're there to fill is not being filled because of the turnaround program and the concerns with that. So I'm not really keen on, I love Tyler and I love what they're doing at Roots, but I'm not keen on doing a quick fix today and leaving it hanging for all the other alternative schools out there. So I'm wondering, Chair, if it would be appropriate to have Director Vanderveeter or someone from their team, I know she has been to the school, but whoever the most appropriate person is from the team, to talk about, like, what is the plan for Roots if we don't do this? And what is the plan for our other alternative schools who are currently not accepting students who need to be in these schools because they're afraid ultimately they're going to get shut down because they can't, because the parameters of turnaround are difficult. And the last thing I'll say is this. I've said this before, and this is a little bit of pontification, so I'm sorry, I'm going to tell you ahead, I try not to do this in board meetings. But I really believe when we made this legislation, we should have at least made a control group and had half of these extra resources, these monies that were being spent, go to the consultants that come in to help the schools, and another control group with the other half of the schools, giving the extra resources straight to the schools who know their students the best and seeing if their progress could be equal to what the outside consultant's progress is. For example, Tyler at Roots has several kids who literally cannot read. He would love to use those resources to hire a reading specialist. He knows what he needs. They know what they need in the schools. So I'll just say that. And with that, I do believe there's a provision in the law I heard this morning that we have an opportunity to do an other. So, maybe something like that could be the other. My last question is for Tracy or whoever comes up to speak to us is, if we pass this motion and Board Member Lear is saying they should be able to request help from USBE as they need it and not being dictated to, will the resources still be there for them to request that help? Or do the resources go away if we pass this motion? Could we have these questions answered by someone from the team, please?
So
Chair?
Tracy, are you coming, will you quickly say just your three questions? One, you ask about the effects to Roots right now. Number two is maybe a bigger question about alternative schools.
Will the resources be there for Roots if we pass
That
this
was your
motion
third.
to request help and resources from our experts here? Two, what's the bigger plan for all of our alternative schools, and how does Roots fit into this big picture? And three, what does the plan look like from, that you're proposing? I know I read it, but I just want to hear a brief summary from one of our team members.
Okay, so Tracy, are you clear on the questions?
I'll do my best.
And introduce yourself, please.
Tracy Van Deventer, Director of the Center for Continuous School Improvement, and I'm very excited to be here to share all of the hard work that's been taking place at all the schools. Specifically, the question about would the resources be available? Those resources right now are set aside for various programs depending on the funding source. We have changed our turnaround program now to Elevate, and that Elevate program just finished our pilot year, so we had applicants come forward and apply to be part of that program. We just finished that review cycle, so this upcoming year has been closed, but we would have that available next year in the Elevate program using the similar funds that were used here. Roots Charter School was part of the 2018-19 turnaround school program, identified because they're 2 years consecutively performing in the lowest 3%. So Board Member Davis, you bring up a really good point about the conflict that we've been seeing with our alternative high schools and with some of the dissonance about students that might drop that graduation rate. That is not the designation that Roots Charter School has right now. That program is our CSI, our federally mandated program to identify high schools that are performing below 67% graduation rate. So Roots is not part of that program and would not be impacted by that graduation rate, other than it is one of the indicators that gives the overall points for performance. And when you look at those indicators, there were 6 indicators that Roots was scored on in the initial designation. Proficiency, growth of the lowest 25%, and then overall graduation rate, advanced coursework, and ACT. I'm not sure if that fully answers the questions that you brought up, but there are 2 separate programs that I think are addressing the graduation rate concerns compared to the performance.
Yeah, because I think the first question's not asked.
So what I hear you saying is that there would not be funds for them to request the help or to continue the help and support this year, but they could apply and potentially receive help the following year with some funds if they get that application. And the other question was, there are 2 other questions. One is, are we talking about, or do we have a plan for alternative schools in general who are in this same situation that are asking the same thing? I mean, we've got Valley High School asking the same thing. Please give us a board member Lear out. What are we doing for them? And then the question, so what's the plan for the big picture? And then if we didn't pass this and Roots stayed in this year, what would that look like for Roots?
And I just want to interject, on the alternative schools, I think that we're already going to be putting that into a committee to work on that. So you can answer that quickly, but I think that's coming.
That's correct, Chair Belknap, that we are planning on a committee that will be reviewing, based on some work that was done in 2018 by the board, where we are looking at the identification process for schools to be considered an alternative high school. Roots does not yet have that designation, but that was one of the recommendations that we asked, that if Roots were to remain, that we would work in partnership with the Charter School Board to make some changes to the Charter Board that reflects the changes in the enrollment that Roots has had over the last number of years. And I think that would serve Valley High School and others also on how do we identify. There's no leeway when you look at the federal guidelines. It is 67% or more, right, in that graduation rate. But there are ways that we can provide the avenues for support for students, in addition to just an alternative high school that I think we need to investigate in partnership with the Secondary Schools Association.
And then, did you get the other one?
The other
Let-
question about the funding, so.
No, it's actually not about the funding. What affects, if this doesn't pass, what supports does Roots have, and how will this affect them in not having supports for this upcoming year?
Well, the question, yes.
Right, yeah, sorry.
It's actually, if it doesn't, I mean, if this doesn't pass,
What do they have?
what will we be giving them this year?
Okay.
That they're not, actually, you're right, I'm sorry.
I
Just
am-
for the record, Vice Chair Belknap is right. I apologize.
I am not aware of a funding stream that we're able to direct towards Roots right now, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. It's just we haven't investigated that because we were making expectations that we'd be able to continue tapping into the funding sources that Roots has been currently receiving. And our intention was to not send that money to consultants or to others outside, but instead to make that more of a personal relationship and have somebody from USBE step in and work as in that consultant role to really try to personalize the support on a very specific area that we felt as a recommendation committee that we wanted to help them with, and that was 3A1, specifically about assessing student progress frequently. And I think that most of the school improvement plan that they had worked on has been implemented well. All of these schools were identified in the fall of 2019 and have done just a tremendous job on improving in the two toughest years of education in a very long time because of COVID and the coronavirus. So, go ahead.
Oh, were you finished?
Well, I just wanted to say, but I do feel that we want to give them support. So if we're not going to give them support through this avenue, I would have to go try to find a way to give some support because right now there isn't an easy access for us to be able to provide that.
Okay, so one last follow-up. The intention, if we continue in turnaround, is that a consultant from USBE would work collaboratively with the director to work specifically on this area, which is assessing more often, but could that include, for example, hiring a reading specialist for the students who can't read, or the pieces that Tyler feels are necessary for their school at this time? Would those potentially be included in this? Or do we have a set plan, you're gonna do what we say?
Absolutely, it's possible. Now we're being driven by the school improvement plan that was created based on the root cause analysis needs assessment that was done at the time. But that's been since 18, 19. So it might be appropriate for us to do a new needs assessment, which could uncover that maybe more reading support would be appropriate, or other ways to support the school that might not currently be included in the school improvement plan. We did not demand that we have in our recommendations that we have that needs assessment, but we felt that we had the capacity to do that if the school felt that that was an appropriate avenue.
Okay, thank you. That makes the decision hard for me, because the resources go away, and the resources potentially could be flexible for the director and the school. Can we postpone that decision?
Board Member Hutchings?
Thank you. This is a subject that's near and dear to my heart because I work every day at a school like Roots. And I work with teachers who serve and teach and work really hard with kids who struggle and who have been turned away by other schools because they were too credit deficient, or they were too far behind, or they had too big of a struggle that they didn't think they could help. And schools like Roots and schools like mine welcome these kids in, and they know it's a challenge, and they know it's gonna be hard, they know it's gonna be gut-wrenching work, but they're up to the challenge and they're willing to do that work. What I have heard is that throughout this turnaround process, that they have worked diligently, they have accomplished many of their goals, and we have seen improvement. And that doesn't surprise me because you don't work at a school like this unless you are really dedicated to making your school better and to serving your students the best you can. I think many times and this has been my concern with the designation, many times just having that designation brings down the way the school is seen on the outside. It brings down the way that employees feel about working at the school, and it brings down the way students feel because they have to attend a school like this. I'm impressed with the progress they've made. I'm impressed with the work that the turnaround you and your staff have done with this school. I think they're ready to try it out on their own with the continued support I'm sure they will get from USBE. So I'm in favor of this motion.
Thank you, Board Member Hutchins. Board Member Hanson,
If I could direct this to Tracy as well.
go ahead.
I think if you can help me, and Director Vandevender, I understand that the team that's been working with Roots over this time on assessment saw that there was improvement, but also saw that they could direct resources and thought it would be valuable for them out of all the schools. They're the one that we think needs to be retained and that we can help them in the future. And we directed that towards the 3A1 goal, it looks like. But with this added flexibility, could we today, I guess, or would it interrupt your plans terribly if we were to move to include this needs assessment and in maybe an attempt to direct resources to something that the school thought was valuable? I assume school inputs come into what the team has done, but would that terribly direct what you have planned right now? And then how important is Roots being in the turnaround program to the adjustment of criteria that we've been talking about, where we'd have alternate criteria for alternate schools, that effort that's going on? Can you comment on those two?
So in regards to the inclusion of a needs assessment, I want to clarify the question. Are you asking that if they were to exit, would we still be able to have a needs assessment, or if they were to
No,
remain?
if we were to keep them
Yeah.
in, yeah.
Perfect. No, I think absolutely that makes a lot of sense. We didn't want to decide for the school that that was important or that was necessary. We do think that Roots Charter School knows very well about the needs of their students and about the work that they're doing. But if they felt that that was important to help further direct the work that they're continuing to do, we were open to it and wanted to provide that. It's one of the nice things about having the consultant come from the State Board of Education is that we can hook them up directly with reading support, or we can hook them up with social emotional support, or continue with all the experts that are here, 330 employees. We're able to make those connections directly. We may then need to have a needs assessment to say, what do you really think, based on, an updated assessment, would help you move to the next level? I'm so sorry, I need the second question
That's
repeated.
fine, and I probably didn't articulate it very well because I'm still formulating it, but I understand there's an effort going on separate from Roots to come up with alternative criteria, I guess, for alternative schools. How to get those schools classified properly and then figure out how to deal with them, because we do have this issue where they don't necessarily perform the same as other schools because they're demographics and probably can't be expected to meet all of the requirements or the targets that we set for schools that have more standard, I guess, demographics. So is this Roots being involved for another year? How does that tie into this effort? Does it help us to do that? Can we try out some things there, or?
Two issues I think are related to that question. One is because Roots is not flagged or designated as an alternative high school, they are not operating underneath the same criteria that currently those alternative high schools have. One of those is when we look at performance, those alternative high schools are not included in our ranking. But in 2018, when Roots first was identified as performing at the lowest or below the 3% of all schools when ranked, they were not at that time flagged as an alternative high school. We believe that, we agree with the director that their student population has changed, but would require some adjustments to their charter. And then we need to move forward, and we would have to bring it to the board to ask that they be flagged as an alternative high school. Then they would no longer be ranked when we look at that, percent performance. However, they still are held to that graduation rate, and we have other challenges about that. One of the concerns is, well, there's a lot of them, but one of the concerns I want to highlight is we believe in some districts, the model is the alternative high school is encumbered or is part of a special program within the comprehensive high school. And that's allowed a lot of fluidity and flexibility between that alternative program and the regular school. And that has also shifted the way that that graduation rate is recorded. That could be one solution to look at, but I believe we need a lot of feedback from a lot of these schools, because we also don't want to lose the autonomy that those alternative schools have and the independence they have to do what they need to do to serve students who are at risk for dropping out. We recognize that there's some rub there.
Thank you. I guess on balance, when I hear this, I'm going to speak against the current motion, but if it doesn't pass, I will make a substitute motion or an amended motion to include also a needs assessment in the efforts that we have with Roots, if we go ahead and keep them in the turnaround program. So thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Hanson. I'm going to take a chair prerogative here. I want a clarifying question, and I would ask the director of Roots if we could ask him a few questions. So Tracy, my question, you continually talk about supports, and you're in that case, are you talking some financial supports?
If they were to remain? Yes, we
And-
believe some funds need to be set aside to continue support.
And if there's not that, then there's not funds that are available that you know today?
There's not a default funding source that we could draw from
Okay,
At the state level.
at the state level.
yeah. So Tyler, are you willing to come to the table, please? I just want to make a comment too, that I was on the state charter board when Roots came and presented for the first time to be a school. I don't know if you remember that or not, Tyler. Okay. Are you terrified?
It was terrible.
Oh, it's terrible? Oh, yeah, it was terrible. So I think that maybe some people maybe have questions directly for you, but my question is this a disadvantage to being out of turnaround just because of the name turnaround? Or is it an advantage to be in turnaround because of financial supports?
I think that for me, it's been a disadvantage. And mainly, if you go historically what's happened to Roots, we were only allowed to pick from 2 turnaround consultants in the beginning. We picked one, we were with them for 3 years. It wasn't the experience that we wished it had been with the school, so we went with the second turnaround provider. Second turnaround provider, tried to get, changing direction. No, I think you should do this. I think in giving advice. The hard part for me it's been a lot of advice, but no time of people kind of backing away and letting us implement stuff that we've learned. Our first year graduation rate was like 37%. Our graduation rate for 2021 was 89%. And so for me, even to hear like, well, no, we want you to assess the students more. Like, we assess them when they come, we assess them mid-year, we assess them at the end of the year, and we make adjustments. We have starters that the teachers are assessing. Are the kids learning? Are they growing? And so I question some of the measurement tools that we use as educators. I question what are we wanting for outcomes for some of our most vulnerable students? Like, what is the outcome? When we get a student who is reading on a 3rd grade level, are we wanting to really work as hard as we can to get them to a working 8th grade level, or is our only goal to get them to grade level? And those are questions I think we have to ask. I have to ask every day because I'm also battling home life. I remember, and I'm a storyteller, so I'll be short, but I remember the day of Aspire testing, a student came in and was just like emotionally just gone, right? And then even the idea that came to my mind that you have to test today. You have to take this test. It wasn't about the student in that moment. It was about me. It was about my fears. It was about me. And taking a big breath and saying, you know what, go home. You need to go home and sleep. Your home life is terrible. Don't worry about the test today. I hate those decisions. right? I want to take any kid, if he's a 12th grader and he has 2 credits, but I can provide him a safe and loving environment for 9 months. I want to be able to take that student. A student who's been kicked out of another school for anything, I want to be able to take that student. Turnaround does make that difficult because it's not about the, and I love Tracy. I've loved everyone I've worked with. Max is kind of my favorite, but no offense. But when we work with
Excuse me.
when we work with these programs, I think it's really easy. And I told Max this when we were designated. I said, if I wanted to turn around the school according to how it needs to be turned around, I could do it really quickly by kicking kids out. And they're giving me plenty of reasons to kick them out. But I don't want to fix the measuring of the school at the cost of a loving environment for the kids who need it most.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Lear?
I was just going to add a few more things to the discussion. I'll do that quickly if that's okay. And I don't necessarily have questions for Tyler. He's talked my ear off already. But I wanted to point out that, and again, I want to repeat 2 things I said in passing earlier. I usually support, I 99% of the time support the USB staff in its recommendations. I believe they're experts. I don't know what the disconnect is here, but this is one time I just can't. I just feel like the school knows more about its school and its students and its progress. And I feel like I need to support the school this time. So I want to always say that. I also concerned that the committee members, and maybe Tracy, you have a different take on this, but according to Tyler, and some of this is stuff he said, I can't say this because these people have been great to me. But he said, the committee members never visited the school, except for Tracy. I've been there 6, 7, 8 times, and you have to be there to understand the work that the Roots is doing. I also understand, and Tyler didn't speak to this just now, but there is a federal program where there is a source of funding for working with schools like this, but according to him, the staff, the administration doesn't have the bandwidth to do both turnaround and a federal source of funding. And I don't know if that's still available. You can still use that, but it's not that they will not be without any financial support, according to Tyler. And the third thing is, I understand we should fix this alternative school problem. I've been saying this on all kinds of issues for 7 years, 8 years, but I don't want to hold Roots hostage to fixing the alternative school problem. I think Roots has a plan, and letting them out of this situation that, again, uniquely the director understands is the right thing to do right now, and then move forward in additional directions.
Thank you, Board Member Lear. Board Member Moss?
Thanks. I'll just second or third. I've only been out there once, but I was amazed at the kids, amazed at what they're doing. I hate the idea that a designation or being in turnaround would hold them back in any way. It does seem like they've taken advantage of everything that's available from turnaround over these 4 years. One piece of the puzzle I just wanted to ask about or address is that when I was on the State Charter School Board, we had an experience with Entheos that went through turnaround, and then the State Charter School Board itself added a piece that really helped. And I'm curious whether, one of the ongoing areas of support or resources that Roots would have if they exit turnaround would be the Charter Board. In that case, they had assigned a mentor, and they did some cool things there that kind of added to, and I think the school felt like it made that final bit of difference. So there was kind of a teamwork there, but it filled in some gaps. And so I'm just curious if you could speak to the opportunity that you'd have for continued support from your authorizer if you do leave turnaround. Is there still an opportunity there to receive some of that guidance or support?
I'm not Jennifer or anyone from that team, but I will say Roots has never not received support from USBE and from even prior to turnaround. I call people, I ask questions, and so I do believe that help isn't hindered if we're in or out of turnaround. That help is always there. My authorizer is my go-to source with first questions like, how do I do this, or what do I need to do this? And so that support's always been there. So I feel like even in turnaround, out of turnaround, that support will be there. And I've spoke with Jennifer just even yesterday and asking her, like, kind of what does that look like, Jennifer Lambert? And I know the support will be there. Charter schools have a lot of bosses, and I think that boss is never going away as an authorizer, and that boss is always someone that offers coaching and help in many ways. And then funding, funding's been talked quite a bit about, and just real quick, just to do what we do outside of turnaround, we have to raise $600,000 a year as a nonprofit. And so for me, when we talk about funding, I'm like, I would just love to have some of my time freed up that I'm not out there also fundraising to raise, $600,000 to do what I believe is right. And so the funding that's come with turnaround, some of it came to us as a grant, and we were able to do things that we believe are right. The majority of it has gone to, I don't want to say corporations because one of them's a nonprofit, but it's gone to that consultant. And so I would love to be freed up from that and let us implement what we've learned so that we can see, what can we do? Because eventually we have to be a school that stands on their own. Like, we have to be a self-sufficient school. And I think we're to that point that we can be.
Thank you, Tyler. Do you have a follow-up?
Just 10 seconds. I appreciate the input, and I'm in support of the motion. It feels like they've used turnaround well, and they've got a plan for moving forward with a different approach that incorporates what they've received, but without some of the downsides that might come from continuing in that designation. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Board Member Earl?
Yeah, I'm in support of this motion, and thank you, Carol, for bringing this forward.
Wow, that really was 10 seconds. Dr. Dixon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, if I may direct a question to Tracy.
Go ahead.
I just wanted a point of clarification. Board Member Lear mentioned that there would be federal funding if there wasn't state funding. I just want you to have an opportunity to clarify, because I think Board Member Lear was referring to CSI, Comprehensive School Improvement, and that would not, in my understanding, Roots would not automatically go into CSI and have that available. So can you just make sure the board understands what would happen if they're out of turnaround and with federal funds?
That's correct. There are no other opportunities right now for federal funds until we have updated designations, and we have two federal school improvement initiatives. One is for low performance, and one is for schools that have low graduation rates. That will be identified again this upcoming fall, and then there'll be another 4-year gap before we identify again. So I'm not sure what federal funds are out there. Of course, there's federal grants and other federal programs maybe, but it wouldn't be within the school improvement program that we have.
Clarification. Can I have a clarification on that from Tracy? Would that be okay? When you say this upcoming fall, do you mean this fall right now?
Yes,
Okay, thanks.
maybe next board meeting if we can get everything organized.
Thank you, Carol.
Yeah, so I just have a follow-up then. So I thought I heard you say earlier that Roots, based on their graduation rates, would not qualify for CSI. Did I hear that correctly? Or would it would be based on the designation determining?
Yeah, I have not seen the most recent final numbers for the CSI low grad, so I can't safely say. I didn't look to see exactly, but my memory is that they did not have the graduation rates that would force them into CSI low grad this fall.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Norton?
Yes, Tyler, thanks for being here. I do have one follow-up question. It was mentioned that you were asked to do additional assessments or, take care of more assessment. And you mentioned that you were doing the standardized beginning, middle, and end of year assessment. As an alternative high school, I'm sure that there are probably other types of assessment that your educators are doing throughout the year. Can you maybe talk about the assessments and maybe the alternative or non-standardized types of assessment that you're doing there at the school?
Go ahead.
So the formal assessing that's done is done through starters and exit tickets, and we use a company called Renaissance for our math and English, and that holds the data, and then the teachers can make those adjustments. Every kid has an advisor, and we use that to track and assess not behavior, emotions, all those things through those advisors. Every teacher has about 7. So those are formative assessments of like, comparing attendance to home life to all of those things. Academically, one of my concerns is that we try really hard to be an authentic school, and it's hard if you're just constantly testing a kid. How do you authenticate that testing? Most of what we teach we can authenticate on the 6-acre farm we have, but we try to assess as far as like what traditionally you would call like a quiz or those assessments. We try to do that as minimal as possible so we can assess or we can get them out and authenticate. I don't know, I'm not in every school. I will say that I can't think of a school that I do know of that knows their students as well as Roots does because of how small we are. And so they're constantly being assessed of well-being. And I probably shouldn't say this right now, but that's actually my most important assessment of these students is their well-being. And so I think it's ironic that we bring in the students that we bring in and we don't qualify, we don't have a low enough graduation rate to qualify for that. That should be a sign that something's going right. But no, I mean, the assessments we're doing, we teach a lot of social emotional learning and the teachers are all trauma informed. And so that constant assessment of where is this kid in life is an assessment we do. We don't keep data on it, but that's an assessment that we do. Our math teacher is amazing. I wish all of you could meet him because he does know who's learning, who's not learning, how do we break them up into groups that are equal. And it's really, really hard when you're trying to do math 1, math 2, math 3, and you have students who are, predominantly at a 5th grade math level. And so
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you. Vice Chair Davis?
This is really hard for me because I think we have systemic issues that we need to work on with this. Midville Elementary School came in, they could have said many of the similar things. Half our kids are living in a homeless shelter, and you're expecting us to do what? It's ridiculous. I was crying through the whole presentation. So I'm really struggling with how to vote on this because I think we need a year to figure out some more of these issues. And I'm also wondering, Tyler, does this mean in perpetuity then? Roots is just exempt from the turnaround laws that are in place? I mean, what happens a year from now? A year from now, if we continue on, I'm hearing there would be flexibility with the funds because you've been working with outside vendors, to my knowledge, that then you'd be moving to our in-house folks, and there would be more flexibility in what you see as needed for the funds if you need reading support or what you need to help with these issues. And then we would reevaluate in a year. But what I'm hearing you say is the stigma of being in a program like this is greater harm than the help would be if you had flexibility from one of our in-house consultants to work together in determining what your students need and how to use these resources. Because if we vote yes to this motion, those resources go away. So that I want to make sure I'm really hearing this from you. And if we vote yes for this motion, what does that mean like for a Midville Elementary or for all these other schools that are going to come in with these same issues? Just help me out.
So do you ask Tyler that?
I'm asking Tyler
Okay.
if what he feels a stigma from being involved in a program like this is worse than knowing there wouldn't be an outside vendor anymore, there would be resources with a consultant from our in-house group to sort of see if we can move the needle like we did with Midville Elementary School.
So I'm just getting clarity. You're not talking about the past, you're talking about moving forward in this next year with the different help and the finances. Go ahead, Tyler.
So first off, it's not so much the stigma. I think if I was worried about that stigma, I wouldn't be at the school I'm at. I'd be somewhere where I could get patted on the back a little more. But the the main thing that, for us, that's hard, and I'll be totally clear, the most difficult thing is the constant micromanaging that comes with a program like Turnaround. Whether it's a third-party provider or USBE, it's the micromanaging, well, now I think you need to do this. And it's not that I think I'm the smartest person in the room, but I sit with these kids, I've been with these kids for 7 years, like, I know what they need. Like, and that's the frustrating part, is like, I know what they need, and it'd be great just to have a break. Like, stop telling me what everyone else thinks they need, and let let us try as a team to give them what we believe they need. And it's draining. This program, great people, great intentions, but it's been the hardest thing that I've had to do with Roots, and I've been spit on by parents. Like, this is harder. This is harder because you constantly are being told. I knew I was in trouble when the turnaround person said, here's what you do. You just take the 6 kids that are from a 1, and you could probably get them close to a 2, pull them out, coach them heavily so they go from a 2 to a 3. You're such a small school, that'll fix your test scores. And I heard that, and I thought, this is the craziest, this is like the twilight zone, what we've created in education. That's the answer, that's about the adults. And I would just love a couple years to try the programs we already have in place without being in any designated program other than Title I.
Thank you, Tyler. You're done. Board Member Cannon?
Thank you. So it's been a few years, but I went out and visited Roots, and it was an eye-opening experience. I've never seen education like it. What Tyler does is he takes these kids who are in such trouble, and he teaches them, if you're familiar with Stephen Covey, the law of the farm. I mean, they grow things. They have to be responsible for caring for animals, farm animals, and they raise them and they sell them. And, these are skills that these kids will have that they've learned from him that probably most of the kids in our state don't learn. And I'm just so grateful for what he does and for what the kids at Roots get from their experience there. I just think it's wonderful. And it's like, it's like learning real life and learning how to exist in our society and what's really important. And so I just feel very, very supportive of Roots. Want to do whatever you feel's best.
Thank you, Board Member Cannon. Board Member Hart?
So I've got a couple of questions. It does sound, I think we've put a lot of people in a tough spot by our rules and our expectations, and I don't think that's anybody's fault, but there is clearly a mismatch. We clearly have a consultant problem in that the quality of the consultants that we offer seems like there's an issue there that we need to look at. There's clearly, we're holding a school hostage because we can't seem to figure out which direction we're going with alternative type schools, regardless of whether they're labeled or not. I understand the need to keep a system. I'm very close to the Midvale schools. I completely understand. And I also understand the principle that if you change a rule for one, you need to change it for all, and what is that, lawyer people? De facto laws, is that what it is? And I admire the mission that you have. I want you to have resources, but I also want you to have the freedom to do what it is that you professionally know you need to do with these students. And I don't think that you can in the structure we have, and that is our fault. And that is something that us as a board needs to work through. Director, your program is awesome. It is. You run a fantastic program that provides a lot of resources to schools, but we've boxed you into a corner with this. And I hope, Tyler, I hope maybe later you could give me some ideas on my tomatoes. I hope you did better than I did this year. I might need a consultant or two students to come help tutor me, but I have no interest in holding a school hostage while we figure out this problem. And it does cause a problem for Midvale and others, but that's our problem to solve, not yours. You have another problem that you're actively solving, and you're doing the work, and I applaud you and your staff. And it absolutely shatters my heart to think that this is this is harder than the things that you are doing on campus. So I understand, and I understand what we've done to your program as well, but I am going to support the thought that, and the idea and the motion that you get to work on it. The subtext, and I'm just going to say it, there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and sometimes what he's telling us is the money isn't worth it with what comes with it and the micromanaging. And we have got to fix that. If a school would rather, if an LEA would rather not have money to do these things, that's a problem. So I hear you saying that the money isn't worth what you can, the amount of space you can move your school with it. Is that what, the question I have, I do have a question. Does the idea of more flexible funding and an internal consultant and support change your mind in any way? I don't know if when that was offered to you, I don't know if this conversation has changed your position on that. I don't know if you knew that was an option or not. Knowing that information, does your position change?
Go ahead.
It doesn't change, mainly because I feel like we've gotten a lot of money over the years. The best money that we got was money that we presented a plan, here's what we want to use with this money and this turnaround money, and here's what we're going to do. And with that money, we were able to put into the school a maker space, which has been huge for the students to be able to go in, create things, especially the students who haven't really found success anywhere else. They're now building and making things. That was turnaround money. You want to give me that, I'll take that all day long. The hard part for me is even the needs assessment that we originally got, as the director of the school, having been there for 3 years at that point, that needs assessment was terrible. Like, I know what our needs are. Their needs assessment said that, and if you've been to Roots, this will make you laugh, that we needed to build a stronger culture. And I was like, what? Like, how? And so for me, it doesn't change the way I feel. I feel like I can call anyone at USBE and get the help I need, but that money is always tied to, we're going to tell you what you need. And I don't know how, other than just trusting Roots, which I'm not recommending. I'm not saying like, just trust me, I'll do whatever I want. But just trusting us and saying, what would you do with $300,000? And then submitting grants for that. That's the kind of turnaround money that makes a difference.
Thank you. And just the follow-up, thanks for coming and saying some really hard things and being put on the spot this morning. I don't think you showed up thinking that you were going to be speaking, but we do appreciate, I at least appreciate that, and am very grateful.
Board Member Hart, I just want to make one clarifying statement that all of the things that are happening in turnaround weren't necessarily at our level. They were given to us statutorily. I just wanted to be clear on that.
Fair, and that should be in the record, and I do think that we will be reminding those individuals of that later.
So, thank you. Vice Chair Davis?
Yeah, I mean, we can't clean up a mess that we didn't create, and there are serious pulls in certain directions on this program, and so it's a difficult space that we're in. I have a question for you, and also echo the thanks to you for coming today. Nobody has answered my question on if the board members assume that we have the ability to just exempt a school in perpetuity from the laws. Because I don't think we do, which means that if we vote yes for this motion, 1 year from now, if there's a regression in scores or whatever, we're going to be sitting here again with you back in turnaround. So my question to you is, how would you feel about amending this motion to a 2-year hold on turnaround proceedings to give you the time that you've asked for, free of USB or other vendor influence, monies, requirements, whatever, give you a 2-year hold for you to go and do whatever it is that you are going to do, and then we reevaluate in 2 years? Because otherwise, you know, again, we could be back here again in a year, and you could be back in turnaround. So what are your thoughts about this?
I like that idea. I don't even mind. The kids I bring in will, for the most part, are turnaround kids. The schools probably cheer when they walk out the door because it's improving the numbers of the schools that surround us. We're up to 70 IEPs out of 200 kids. Like that's high, right? And so I recognize that our numbers may put us in turnaround. If the system was different, I'd say I want to be in turnaround the rest of my life. Until those changes take place, I think that's a great idea, like 2 years. And anyone who knows me knows I don't have a problem with being held accountable. Like I'm always transparent. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with being held accountable to and measured by stuff that doesn't apply to this or struggles to really apply to the students that we're serving. And so I think that's a great idea. Even if it was 1 year of saying, like, if you fall into turnaround in the other year where you're going to know it and we're going to talk to you, I would support that. Not that I have a vote, but I think it's a good idea.
Vice Chair Davis?
Quick follow-up, and then I have a motion. But do you prefer 1 year so you have the option to come back and say, we're asking for the resources now that we're still in turnaround? Or do you prefer a 2-year? And then I'll make a motion.
I think 2 years is good. I think the beauty of Roots is we're a petri dish. If something's working at Roots, it's going to work for the rest of USBE, all of the other LEAs. And so I am excited and I want an opportunity to like have the training wheels off. And I think 2 years is good to see like what is working, what's not working, and then throw up that, a flag of, yeah, we need help.
Thank you. I have a motion, Chair.
Okay. An amendment?
Yes. I move to amend the motion on the floor for a 2-year pause on the turnaround provisions. That's it, for Roots Charter School.
I'll second that.
Okay, that's going to be an interesting motion. Angie, I might need a little help here. So the amended motion is, as that the board approves all 5 schools reviewed by the State Review Panel for Exit from School Turnaround Program, with Roots Charter School having a 2-year pause. Does that make sense, Angie? Except we are having them exit turnaround.
But we have to vote on the amendment.
Oh, yeah, we do have to vote on the amendment first. I apologize, you're right. So the amendment is to have Roots Charter School on a 2-year pause. No, from turnaround. Provisions. Oh, Board Member Earl.
Right, we're speaking to the amendment, right?
Yep.
Okay, I just would speak against this. I don't think that it's necessary. If they, in 2 years, need to be in turnaround, it's going to be evident. There's not this idea of we're going to pause you. They've made significant progress in their areas, and I think with the changes coming forward, there won't be a need for this in the future. There'll be other availability, so I speak against this.
Thank you. Seeing no other discussion, the amendment is that Roots Charter School, and is it Academy? Roots Charter School Academy? Roots Charter School will have a 2-year pause from turnaround. Is that right? From turnaround? Okay, all in favor? Those opposed? No. Okay, raise your hands, those who are in favor, thank you. That would be Board Member Cannon, Board Member Hanson, and Board Member Davis. Okay, that motion fails. So the motion before the board is that the board approves all 5 schools reviewed by the State Review Panel for exit from school turnaround programs. All in favor? Oh, hold on.
I'll just speak quickly. That means we could be back in a year again, faced with the same decision. So that's, just make sure that's clear.
Okay, so the motion is that the board
Laura?
approves. Yes.
I'll just add, I think that we're opening ourselves up to exception after exception every time we get a turnaround cohort that comes in. If that's what we want to do is evaluate things in that way, then that's the way we should move forward. But thanks.
Thank you. Board Member Lear?
All right. So I have to defend this to some extent legally and also in terms of I feel very uncomfortable not supporting USBE staff because I really think they are experts in this situation, in most situations. But I see this legally differently than Scott and Cindy, and that is that I think because of the provision in the rule, some board before us left in the rule the opportunity for the board to take other action. So it's there. And I don't think that taking this action today establishes a precedent. Maybe it ignites an idea or creative thought in some turnaround school somewhere, but I don't think it means that every school has to be treated the same way, only evaluated on an even playing field, which we would do anyway. So I don't think this is some slippery slope that we need to worry about. But I think it is allowed for in the rule, and I'm supportive of doing the right thing for this school right now, and I think that relieving the stress is more important. I'll conclude with one other thing. I had an exchange with one of the USBE administrators who I just truly respect, who was urging me to say and reminding me that staff wants to follow the law, follow the rules, and I, of course, said, of course I do too. But I said, our prime directive is different. You want them to meet a graduation rate. I want the school to stay open. I think it is crucial that the school stays open. And that's where I am still, and I want to do what's best for the school, and I think right now is relieving the stress and not feeling like this is a slippery slope that we can never come back from.
Thank you. Board Member Hutchins?
Call previous question.
Okay, it's non-debatable. All in favor to call the previous question? Say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, so the motion, and thank you. The motion before the board is that the board approves all 5 schools reviewed by the State Review Panel for exit from the school turnaround program. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? No. There are 2 noes? Thank you. Thank you.
Madam Chair, could I
Yes,
just
go
make sure I
ahead.
correct something? I just want to correct something for the record. I so appreciate the conversation around staff, but just want to make sure that the public and the board remembers that the review panel consisted of a variety of people, including somebody from the authorizer. If you look, it's in your backup. So there's a member of the authorizer team. We have 3 members from different places in our staff, and then there are 2 members from 2 principals from the field. So just want to make sure that it's not about staff or the board, but it's about the panel, which was a compilation of people. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Do you have some? Your light's on. Okay, thank you so much. We're going to go back to 4.2. Board Member Klein?
Yes.
Can we take these one at a time?
Sure.
Or do you want to do them all together?
Well, I just wanted to point out, at least on number 2, the Infinity contract, some issues that I see there.
Okay, just for clarity, we're on 4.2.2. Go ahead.
Yes, so I would just make a motion that we, well, I don't know, I guess we're going to vote on it anyway, but some of the issues that I saw in looking at their website is the, first off, it was created in collaboration with the National Science Foundation, which on their website, they openly state that the premise from which they work is on the idea that we are a systemically racist country. And so they work with Infinity to create this immersive, gamified tech learning program that has embedded whole student assessment, which incorporates SEL, which I have issues with embedded SEL in all of these things, especially when it is coming from a company that espouses the idea that we are systemically racist. Also, the 21st century soft skills, which is just another way of saying SEL, that is incorporated into it, and the constant embedded assessments that it touts, real-time customized assessments, so that they're collecting this data on kids in real time, all the time, on these attitudes, values, beliefs, dispositions. And so I have issues with that as well as the possible PII that is collected according to the contract. So that would be my concern there, as well as the dynamic nature of the curriculum or the tech program, meaning it's always changing. And so anytime we sign on with a vendor, we are at risk of their program always changing, and we don't know what's in it. So the lack of transparency, it's another big issue that I see there. So I will not be in support of that. I will also not be in support of the West Ed for reasons that I've made clear in previous meetings, or the interagency agreement with Department of Workforce Services, as I don't believe that we should be collaborating with Department of Workforce Services as it puts us on a kind of a work training program instead of education where kids choose which way they go with their education and with their careers. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Klein. I would be seeking a motion. Sure. Yep. I would be seeking a motion to approve 4.2 contracts and agreements.
So moved, and I'd like to speak to it.
Second.
Second. Okay, Vice Chair Davis?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that I actually did not approve or vote for the last West Ed because of the training provisions and such. And this one in special ed, I think, looks very different. And so I support moving forward in these areas.
Thank you. Board Member Norton?
And I support the Infinity as well. I have used that program now for 2 years. It is a program that is very fun for the students to use. They're on usually a mission to Mars or some other planet, but the teachers have, most of the time, the teachers write their own questions, and if not, we had the choice of using Utah core science questions or Utah core math questions for this. So I thought it was a very interactive, great way for students to learn. They looked at it as the greatest reward they could earn for the week. And, you know, it was just an hour of intense science or intense math.
Thank you, Board Member Norton. Board Member Lear?
I had a question, and I'm sorry, I stepped out for a minute, so I hope this wasn't mentioned. But as I read these contracts, and not as clear, not as deeply or as Member Klein, but as I read them, I saw them as amendments to existing contracts. Am I accurate about that? There was one that was fairly substantial, but the rest of them were an additional piece to existing contracts that was pretty minimal.
Do we have someone who can answer that? Adam, will you state your name and your
Yes.
position?
Adam Hurd, Director of Purchasing and Contracts. And no, these are all new agreements. They're not
They're all-
amendments.
They're new, they're not amendments.
Correct.
How did I miss?
It's because it had the old number plus a new.
Okay, should read more contracts more carefully. What kind of a lawyer am I?
I had the same.
Okay, all right, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. That is helpful, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay, see no, oh, yes, Board Member Earl?
Just one question, the West Ed study, if I understand it, it's to understand the funding, how districts are using it, codifying it, and specifically around our special education to make sure we're efficient in our, what we're doing. Is that an accurate statement? Could someone speak to that? That's a broad, but when I read through it, that's what I understood that to be.
Yes, that is correct.
Small rural districts, though.
I believe it includes all of them. Yeah. But yes, you're correct. And if we wanted more information, I would probably defer to Assistant Superintendent Voorhees, as she helped to assist.
That's okay. And then one other, may I ask another question?
Go ahead.
Will we receive reports on this as it goes along? It looked like there were timeframes, but did they report back to the board, December, the different areas as they transition throughout the research?
That's a great question. I would need to review the contract because Assistant Superintendent Voorhees was more integral in developing that scope of work, so she could answer that question, unless you wanted me to take a moment and review that scope.
Okay, well, I was just curious on, are there opportunities if we had additional thoughts or insights as it moves along to make those?
Yes, we should have those opportunities, absolutely.
Okay.
She's coming. And Lee, if you introduce yourself?
Good morning, Board. Leah Voorhees, Assistant Superintendent of Student Support. Thank you for asking that question. Yes, the purpose of the study is actually to inform the board because we received a question 8 or so months ago about the use of intensive services funds and the reimbursement process for intensive services funds in order for you to be able to update, if you want to, R27752, which is the rule related to the use of those funds. If you remember, the legislature gave the board a small pot of state money to supplement the IDEA money that we send as a reimbursement to LEAs who have students that have high-cost services, 3 times more than the normal average cost of the services for a student with a disability. And the amount that LEAs request for reimbursement is significantly more than the amount that we have to send to them. So this particular study is to be able to get the data we need for you to determine how you want to move forward with that particular rule and the reimbursement of those costs.
Thank you. And thank you, Adam, as well. Okay, so the motion before the board is that the contract, that we approve the contracts and approval for 4.2, that we approve the contracts and agreements. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? No. Board Member Klein? Okay, this is so exciting to be able to have board member comments. Board member, what's it called again? Board member message right now. So we're going to go back to 1.2 and go to Board Member Hutchings. And welcome our German traveler, Board Member Booth. We're happy to have you here.
Hopefully I'm still traveling later on today.
Your flight got canceled? Oh, my gosh. Oh. Okay. And if the public didn't hear that, we talked about earlier that he was going to Germany, but his flight got canceled because of extreme heat, so that's kind of interesting. Okay, so we're getting ready with Board Member Hutchings. Why don't we just take a 5-minute break right here? And 5 minutes, and then we'll come back. Board members, will you please take your seats so we can begin? Board Member Hutchings, are you ready? I feel like I need to go back to the Olympics somehow here. So go ahead, Board Member Hutchings.
Okay, thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you for your patience. I miscommunicated the time, and so it's definitely, I promise you, it was worth the wait. Hopefully you'll feel that way. I think you will. When I was thinking about the member message this month, I was feeling quite a bit of pressure because you guys have a high bar when it comes to member messages. And I was talking to my son who's serving a mission in Louisiana on a P-Day a few weeks ago, and I'm like, I don't know what I want to talk about. And he said, talk about something that's important to you. And I thought that was really good advice. And then it was about the next day that I read Superintendent Dixon's op-ed on being a builder, and that just kind of sparked in my mind something that is important to me that I have lived for many years, and I think applies to education and very, very nicely. So we're going to start out with a video, and we're honored to have Derek Parra, who's a gold medal winning speed skater, who won his gold in our Olympic oval. And so we're just going to kick off and relive that gold winning race with him.
He helped carry the World Trade Center flag at the opening ceremony. Then the next day, watch the Stars and Stripes from the podium. Derek Parra kick-started American speed skaters with a surprise silver in the 5,000. Now, today in his specialty, he hopes to continue his inspiring Olympic journey. And here is the man who began this American Medal Haul about a week and a half ago with that silver in the 5,000, now looking for more in this 1,500. Let's go to Andrea Joyce.
Dan, with his performance in the 5,000, Parra feels today that anything is possible. And instead of putting that race behind him, his coach, Bart Choughton, just told me that Derek has done a great job of using all the attention to psych himself up. He operates better that way. Add to that the fact that Derek skated the fastest lap of his life yesterday in practice at 24.8. And in Choughton's words, I am very confident the gold is in his reach.
Now set here in his specialty, the 1,500. Derek begins on the outer, and on the inner from Canada is Stephen Elm.
Derek Parra, so much fun to watch, Dan, whooping up the crowd before his race. You don't see many skaters doing that. He loves it. He feeds off the energy of the crowd to see if he can come up with another medal here today.
One reason why that time and finish by Parra in the 5,000 was so unexpected, before he broke the world record in that 5,000, he had the 36th fastest time ever ever before he broke the world record. He comes into this 1500 with the 14th fastest time for a skater ever. So again, if he's going to be a factor here in the medal stand, he's got to trim a lot off of his time, which used to be the American record before Nick Pearson broke it early.
Well, 146.20 is Derek Parra's personal best, but Dan, that is misleading. He can skate almost a second and a half faster than that, and he's going to have to do that to medal here today.
With 2 laps left, Derek is about 8/10 ahead of the pace set by Altahagen. Remember that lightning last lap by Altahagen means that the skaters, if they're going to flirt with that Altahagen time, have to really be well ahead of him with a final lap left.
Well, this is an important lap here, right here for Derek Parra. 1:16.94 was the split for Altahagen. Parra would like to be closer to 1:16.2, maybe better. 1:15.5, he's way ahead.
He's nearly a second and a half ahead of Altahagen. So we'll see what Derek Parra has up his sleeve here in the final lap of this 1500.
Well, Dan, Altahagen's lap was 27.6. All Parra needs to do is skate somewhere around the low 28-second lap. He's going to set another world record here. We'll see what he's got in the last 100 meters.
It was Altahagen who set the world record and stole the gold from Parra in the 5,000. And the time for Parra here is, he did a world record. So favor, Derek Parra.
Okay. I have invited Derek Parra to be here, and he has his medals that he said he would be willing to pass around and let you see while I fill in with my message and just a little information about him. I do want to tell you about one of the tremendous success stories out of the Salt Lake 2002 Winter Games that is literally close to my home. In the heart of my district, there is a part of unincorporated Salt Lake County on the west side called Kearns. Some of us who live there affectionately call it the Hood. Kearns is not an affluent area. Neighborhoods are full of hardworking families who many times struggle to get by. When the 2002 Winter Olympics were being planned, someone said, "What if?" And that made all the difference. What if this little area in the world could be an Olympic venue like Salt Lake City or Park City? As an unincorporated township, Kearns could not do this on its own. We had to reach out and work with others to be capable of Olympic venue greatness. The Kearns community took on several significant projects to beautify and celebrate the Olympics to truly welcome the world in. They had an insignificant budget, so with thousands of community volunteers, many corporate, private, and government donations, and the understanding that it could only happen if we were willing to work together and share expertise and resources from all over the community, the county, and the state. As a result, Kearns has become a hidden jewel in the heart of the West Side, and I would argue in the state of Utah. Our Olympic Oval, go to the next slide. Our Olympic Oval has been dubbed the fastest ice on earth and holds more world records for speed skating than any other rink in the world. The Olympic Oval is now considered the most successful Olympic venue on the planet. Why? The secret to this venue's success is not in the way that they serve only world-level athletes, though many countries continue to send their top-tier speed skaters to the Oval to train each year, when most other Olympic venues would close their doors to anything but the very best. The Oval opens its doors wide. Next slide. The secret is that when the top athletes are not training, they open the doors to the community. The ice is full of, and 3 sheets of ice. There's the oval that goes around and 2 full hockey rinks in the middle. The rinks are full of learn to skate programs, learn to curl, learn to play hockey, track meets even, hockey games, and partnerships with the surrounding schools. My kids and my family have definitely benefited from this attitude, as for several years the Oval was my second home, while my children have developed invaluable skills there. I have seen my children, and this is my personal example, have developed skills and confidence, courage and toughness, that have helped them, not in just their lives, but in their academics and in their schooling. It has complemented the work that they have been able to do in school. It has supported their learning in school. And that is thanks to the community openness that the Oval has provided, and particularly with Derek's support working at the Oval now and bringing in the community and specifically partnering with schools. There is a word for this cooperative effort, and it is called synergy. According to Franklin Covey, to put it simply, synergy means two heads are better than one. Synergize is the habit of creative cooperation. It is teamwork, open-mindedness, and the adventure of finding new solutions to old problems. Together, they can produce far better results than they could individually. Synergy lets us discover jointly things we are much less likely to discover by ourselves. It is the idea that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. 1 + 1 = 3, or 6, or 60. You name it. This has led me to ask myself, what if we had a similar approach in education? At a time when we really need to accelerate learning, could we actually improve education if we build bridges to the local community to expand the opportunities we can provide for students? What if we let the very best of what we do in education out into the community and let the very best of our community inspire what we do in the schools? How can students make gains needed to catch up from the pandemic? These are questions that I have. Not yet. Thank you. How do parents and schools help students find their purpose and passion for education? How do we tear down the fences and open the doors of opportunity for all students? And what if we let the very best of education out into the community and let the very best of the community inspire what we do in the schools? I want to share some examples that I've seen in my own community and in the state of schools that are doing this and having tremendous academic results. One is, of course, the Utah Olympic Oval itself. It creates all kinds of community partnerships, including school partnerships, where they bring in, there's several schools that are very close to the Olympic Oval, and they have programs where they bring in students and use it for PE opportunities and other experiential and development opportunities. Close to the Olympic Oval is Entheos Kearns Academy. And this is one of the schools that they use the Oval as a PE opportunity and for expeditionary learning. They also have part of their model is to have many community partners that they bring in, and they share with the students different kinds of learning opportunities. And I've seen in my own kids who have attended this school a great depth of knowledge that they gain from these experiences. Next, Kearns Junior High. This is the first school that I had a real job at teaching Spanish. And they partnered with the United Way and with Salt Lake County Library System to help students before and after school to provide learning opportunities, homework help, and skill building opportunities to balance out their day and their life. And they have seen remarkable academic gains in relationship to building these partnerships. Another program I've become familiar with and am very impressed with is the Promise Schools in South Salt Lake, where there are multiple elementary schools in South Salt Lake that participate in this program, where teachers, parents, and the surrounding community work together so that students can learn and grow to their full potential by providing after-school activities and development opportunities for students after school hours in their neighborhood schools, and have shown outstanding academic gains across the board since this partnership was established. In Daybreak, they are working on the idea of a community schools where they have a shared building concept. During the day, the doors are open for the regular school day. In the afternoon, that door closes, another door opens, and they become the community's recreation center, providing those neighborhood, close, accessible opportunities for students in the area. And finally, of course, I need to talk about my second home nowadays, and that's Davis Technical College, who is well known for their community partnerships, One I want to point out specifically that just shows you how important these partnerships can be is Davis Technical College, working with the surrounding high schools, found that they could not have all the welding classes that were in demand by the high school students. They just coming over to the college, and there just wasn't space or time to fulfill that need. And so instead, they shared their curriculum and expertise, and they also shared their own staff to go and teach welding in the high schools. And so looking for opportunities that we can share our expertise to elevate education in the schools, and and the data show that it elevates the academic learning that the schools specialize in and provide. So my question is, what if? What if community partnerships could accelerate academic achievement? What if we shared our vision with others and worked together to meet our goals? What if we could work together to build bridges and find common ground to improve educational outcomes for all students? And what if every student could have their own gold medal experience in the Utah public school system? I believe we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Hutchins, and thank you, Derek, for sharing your experience, like we just relived it, and for your medals. They're very heavy. So, do you want to turn on your mic, please? That's okay. And introduce yourself, please.
Oh, good.
This is Derek Parra. The local organizing committee and the games require a minimum amount of precious metal in the medals. So every medal has a minimum of 6 milligrams of gold, because that's about 2.5 pounds. And if that was real gold, solid gold, you wouldn't be touching it. No, just kidding. No, but it'd be much more valuable. So every organizing committee has a chance to develop those medals based on the theme of their games.
Thank you so much. Thank you.